Siamo qui con William Simpson, lo storyboard artist di Game of Thrones e quello dello storyboard artist.
So, we are here with...
The role of a storyboard artist is to interpret what the director wants to film, and it's where you make a comic strip version in a way of what the scene is going to be. You solve the problems before we spend any money on setting up hundreds of actors.
In passato mi è capitato di incontrare degli storyboard artist della Pixar, ad esempio per Il viaggio di Harlow, che era un film di animazione. Qual è il differente approccio tra un live action, cioè una serie TV, o un film di animazione per gli storyboard artist?
I don't think there's such a difference between film and television. There is a big difference, I think, between live action and animation. I mean, animation storyboarding tends to be working out keyframes of animation that really determine what the animation is going to look like. Storyboarding for film and television is a guide, really, to what a scene can be. It's working out a lot of big problems, but it's not exactly what you're going to see on screen. Not really. You're going to see something that resembles the storyboard on screen, but you're not actually going to see the storyboard on screen, if you know what I mean. Animation is different. Animation, the actual storyboard becomes a very, very precise guideline for what's made in animation.
O il filo conduttore che lega le varie stagioni, i vari episodi, perché i registi comunque cambiano in maniera anche frequente nella serie TV, mentre lei è sempre presente.
It is funny being one of the only people that has been on it since the beginning. I mean, there's the producers and there's me, and it's a really lucky position to be in. You know, I think because I was involved from the beginning, you feel really connected to it. You feel like it's something that you really focus on as an important position. You know, you're given an awful lot of trust in a lot of ways, because this is something that you do know more about than a lot of the directors, because a lot of the directors are only coming, they change at different years. I mean, we've got different directors now to the directors that we had in the first season. So it's kind of interesting because you're aware of all the characters, you're aware of where they've gone to, where they've developed along the way, but you still are there to interpret what a new director wants to do. And it becomes a really interesting conversation between you and the directors, because in a way they're your boss for their episodes, and yet it's nice when they kind of look to you for in some way some kind of confirmation of things, because you've been there for a while, I guess. I don't know, man, it's a lucky position. I love what I'm doing. It's great fun to be doing it. It's been great, to be honest, since the beginning. And I just feel that I've been in a really, really lucky place,
Lei era un fan di Game of Thrones anche prima di lavorare per la serie TV, ha letto i libri di Martin, come è stato il suo rapporto tra il testo scritto dall'autore e la trascrizione?
You're going to be really pissed off. I haven't read the books because, when I got hired, when I got bought onto Game of Thrones first, I was working on a movie called Your Highness, which was a Danny McBride, Natalie Portman, James Franco film, and it was a comedy medieval film. And my producer, Mark Huffman, had come to me during I was doing concepts at that time, and had asked me would I do some extra work, and I said sure, what on? And he said, well, I can't tell you. And I said, well, what's this thing about? And he said, well, it's a medieval fantasy. And I said, okay. And he said, we'd like you to do some drawings for it. Basically, it's like a proof that we could do this, I assume. Anyway, I was asked to meet the production designer and the supervising art director, and they still didn't tell me what I was working on. they give me little passages of script, but without any kind of detail as to what this was. So I had to draw some castles, some giant wolves, some knights, in armor, some beheadings, and so I did this stuff. It turned out to be my weekend work and some late nights, and I gave them the artwork, and I went back to my day job on Your Highness, and halfway through Your Highness, Mark came to me and said, "We've got Game of Thrones." And I said, "Oh, is that what I was working on?" And he said, "Yes." And I said, "Did I get a job?" And he said, "Absolutely." So the thing is, I went into Game of Thrones not knowing, I'd started drawing for it, not realizing what I was drawing for at the beginning. And when I went on to Game of Thrones, the first thing I figured I should do is read the book. So I read the first book. But I also had my script, when I knew I was going to be on the show. So I was hired then to design weaponry and things like the White Walkers, and there was a lot of. I got to do dragons, I got to do carriages, I got to do the Godswood tree and stuff like this. And it was, most of my work was the first versions of these things, which they then were able to take and get other people to work on to develop what we were going to see in the show. So it was kind of really nice to be right in at the start of this. But when the pilot was finished and we heard we were going to be doing the first season, I thought, well, okay, the first season is the first book, so I've already read that. That's pretty good. And when I got on with the first season, I got my 10 scripts and I started working. And at the end of it, when we knew then there was going to be a second season, I figured I should read the second book. So during that time, though, I got some work through Game of Thrones out in Los Angeles to work on the Blu-ray illustrations. And so I took the book with me, thinking I was going to read this book. And I read the first few chapters, and but then when I was in Los Angeles, I was working, so I wasn't reading. And then I came back thinking I'd finished the book, and I was called in early to work on a big sequence for a season.
Storyboard artist preferisce lavorare a degli episodi più lenti, dialogati come quelli di inizio della quinta stagione, oppure a quelli spettacolari e ricchi di action come Hard Home and Mother Mercy?
There really isn't much of a difference between working on the big action sequences and working on the quieter sequences. It's still about drawing. It's still about telling story. So there's all sorts of sequences, where there's you got knights on horseback leading up to conversations, leading up to disagreements, riding away again, and those are just as interesting as drawing a whole bunch of crazy zombies coming charging at characters. I suppose, the lovely thing about something like Hard Home was it was such a big episode and such a massive scene that the ability to sit down and break all of that information down, it's fantastic. It's a big challenge, so it's really nice to work on. The same thing with the Battle of Blackwater Bay, which again was another massive piece of work. I had to do 4 different versions of Blackwater Bay at the time, just because there was a version done in the first place to try and solve some things before the director got there. Then when the director got there, we had to do a second version. And then when he had a production meeting where they decided there were certain things that we couldn't do, then we had to do a third version. And then his dad got ill and he had to go back to Canada. And then we got Neil Marshall in, so there had to be a 4th version. It's lots of bits, So that was a very busy time. But there's other little things. There's really nice sequences with Danny walking through the desert, and they were just as interesting to draw, as doing Hard Home. I've got lots of favorite bits, and I think some of the sequences where I was asked to break them down myself with no direction because the director wasn't there yet, they were really interesting for me, especially because there was a couple of sequences that ended up being filmed as I've drawn them. So that's kind of nice, because in a way you're actually a second director of some kind, you know, just for those pieces. And thankfully my directors liked what I'd done, you know. So the job's every day is a different aspect of it, and I just for me it's just the ability to draw. You know, when I go home at night and I draw artwork for myself, it's the same thing. I get the same kick out of that, you know.
Nel corso delle varie stagioni di Game of Thrones sono morti diversi personaggi, quindi ha dovuto rappresentare diverse morti. Qual è quella che l'ha sconvolta di più, e se il suo personaggio preferito è vivo, è morto, non si sa?
No? I think, you know, I remember when Ned Stark got killed. That was a big shock. Everybody was shocked. I mean, I'd read the scripts and I was shocked. It was still this massive moment in the series, and you start thinking, well, if they can kill off Sean Bean as Ned Stark, okay, where does this program go? They can kill off anybody, which of course is what they've proven. When Robb gets killed, and you know, Robb and his family, oh my God, that was lethal. It was like, you know, what have I just read? Because you know, you've got to realize I get these scripts. You know, that my first 2 days in the show, they give me like 9 or 10 scripts to read through. Sometimes they don't have the last one, and you sit down and you read these things, and you're going, oh my God, what has just happened? And the season when Jon Snow got killed, I mean, Jon Snow's death on the show for me was just like, this is insane. How can you keep killing off your lead characters? I mean, this was just nuts, and it was the big shock ending. You know, when I got to Jon Snow's death, it was just too much. And I remember that the scripts for that season, the script editor Alana is down the corridor from where I work, and I would, every 2 episodes somebody had died or something horrifying had happened, and I was going down the corridor going, you've got to be kidding me, what are they doing next, you know? So I think you know, the Jon Snow death was a real shock. It really is. It's massive. Now, my favourite character is Tyrion, right? Tyrion is, you know, he is the masterpiece of this show. Tyrion is, you know, he represents all of us. I mean, he's the small guy, you know, people are, you know, he's the guy that does his best to fix things and always is blamed for things going wrong, you know. He's the guy who actually the kingdom was safe with, and yet gets all the blame when stuff has gone down the tubes. He's the one that actually has a mind that cares about things, and everybody else doesn't seem to care about a damn thing. You know, for me, Tyrion is my absolute favourite character. I love Dany because she's cute, but Tyrion's the guy. I mean, you know, he kind of makes the show.
E cosa pensa del fenomeno dei leak che costringono i fan spesso e volentieri a ritrovarsi sul web gli episodi in anticipo, i trailer in anticipo e magari anche immagini come quelle degli scorsi mesi con Jon vestito da Stark, comunque sia, vicino a Melisandre? Ecco, magari sarebbe più bello vedere gli episodi senza avere questa anticipazione. Lei cosa ne pensa?
I can say nothing about all of this because I haven't seen any of the things that are supposed to be leaked, and you know, the last I saw Jon Snow, he had knives stuck in him and he was dead. So you guys obviously know something more than I do. Melisandre, who knows what she's got going for her? I mean, she's got things wrong so much in the past, hasn't she? You know, as a character, I loved the whole thing with Melisandre and King Stannis. And Stannis is meant to be this guy, he's meant to do all this stuff, he's meant to be, you know, he will win the war, he will be this, he will be the champion of everything. Whoops, he's dead. You know, I mean, here's the guy who, you know, sacrifices his daughter for you know, for the mystical power that he's meant to get. Oh my God, that woman, the Red Witch, is completely fucked up everything. I mean, it's just ridiculous, you know. So yeah, I wouldn't rely too much on anything she says.
L'ultima domanda, qual è il personaggio che ci stupirà di più nella sesta stagione, in cui ci sarà un cambiamento radicale rispetto al passato? Cioè, quale personaggio ci sorprenderà?
See, how can I answer that? I have no idea what I can tell you. There's nothing I could say about season 6. There really isn't. I mean, season 6 is just more of what we've had before. It's bigger, there's more crazy shit. There's, sorry, forgive my language. It's just more, and all I can say is I like where it's going. I like where it's leading. More conflict, more death. That's the show, really, isn't it? That's it. I can't tell you anything else.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Grazie.